Welcome back to the Canadian Baseball Network podcast. I think we can call this a historic podcast, Jackson. The Toronto Blue Jays are going to the World Series.
It's unbelievable, Matt. It's the first time in my lifetime I'm seeing the Jays win an AL pennant and go to the big dance, the World Series, taking on the LA Dodgers. I mean, what a matchup. What a storyline it's been throughout the whole season. You get to this point, it does feel like sort of the final boss, right, at the end of the line. And it's electric. What this does for Canadian baseball as well, Matt, you think about, the Jays for the first time since 1993 back in the World Series against, the Kings, the defending champs. Can't ask for a better matchup. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, we were talking before we got on here. Sometimes when you think back, I know I don't even know if you were born yet in 92, 93. I was a baby. It almost seems like that's just like a story. Sometimes you watch the documentaries and it just seems like it was so, long ago. And so that idea of going to the World Series sometimes seems so far-fetched over the last 32 years. And yet here we are and we're living it. And to think that, someone might look back 30 years from now and think about this George Springer home run. You really have to take time to appreciate it and enjoy it in the moment, even before this series starts.
I remember during COVID, they were showing replays of the 93, when Joe Carter hits the home run, and how it ends. You know what happens. So you are looking at it through that lens. We didn't know George Springer was going to hit that massive 3-run home run last night. We still don't know how this story ends. We didn't know they were going to win an AL pennant. It's incredible what a ride it's been. You never know if you'll see something like this again. So you're so lucky to witness it. And, I think too about, for me personally, sharing these moments with loved ones, sharing this with my dad, stuff like that like you understand sort of the gravity of the moment. When Springer hit that home run, I mean, that's probably the second biggest home run in franchise history, one of the biggest home runs in Canadian baseball history. So to get to witness that, Matt, it's so cool.
Well, and even tie it just, obviously being the Canadian baseball network, tying it back to the grassroots level. What is this going to do for baseball in this country? Like you mentioned, I'm hearing from people that don't even watch baseball, asking about the Jays and watching the Jays. And you kind of saw it in 2015, 2016, a new generation of fans, ushered in through Jose Batista, Edwin Encarnacion, Josh Donaldson, that group. What does this do? Because they're going to play in the World Series on Friday against Shohei Ohtani. Plenty of storylines. And regardless what happens, this is really a huge moment in the franchise's history.
Massive. They're going to be hanging a banner next opening day, next home opener in 2026. Just a matter of what kind of banner it'll be. And I think too about, when the Raptors won the championship, the NBA championship in 2019, and what that did for basketball in this country. And you think about, absolutely, the Batista days prior to that, the 92, 93, what that did for baseball in this country. Canada's got, we talk about it all the time, of course, Canadian Baseball Network, a rich Canadian baseball history, but this just continues to add to it, man. The latest story in an incredible year for the Jays. I mean, who saw this coming?
I did. I was down at spring training and I watched George Springer, over the course of that time. And I didn't even know if he was going to make it to this point in the season. I mean, based on his last year and his spring training didn't look good, but he always maintained that confidence. I guess for moments like this, never doubt the guy. I mean, he's done it over and over again. And he did it again last night.
I still remember us talking about Alan Roden maybe taking ABs away from him at the start of the year. And now look how things have changed. What a story. So many stories to talk about. And we're lucky to have the senior Sportsnet senior writer, David Singh, who's going to join us here shortly, Matt, to share, because he was there covering this game and what he saw as well.
Yeah, we're going to take you behind the scenes here with David. He was at the game. Obviously, he covered the team all season. He was in the clubhouse, enjoying some of the celebrations, or seeing the Jays enjoy some of the celebrations. He spoke to players, and we're looking forward to bringing you that now. We're excited to welcome senior writer at Sportsnet, David Singh. David, how's it going?
Good, guys. How about you?
Good, not bad. A late night for you, I bet.
Yes, a late one. You can see by the bags under my eyes, but we're good though.
So I do want to talk a little bit some specific moments in last night's game, but I just kind of wanted to open the floor. What are your initial thoughts? It's been about not quite 24 hours yet, but what are your initial thoughts on what just happened for the Toronto Blue Jays?
Yeah, I mean, initial thoughts would be the amount of happiness that's kind of gone around. Just texts from friends and family and people in the stadium, obviously, watching the newscasts. 32 years. 32 years ago, I was, I think, 6 or 7 years old. So I didn't get a chance to experience what a World Series was like in this city. And it's kind of everything that my parents told me about, and that my older cousins told me about, like how people would be so happy. And it's kind of cool to watch that happen in real time. Like, the stadium was nervous. The stadium was, I don't want to say sad, but it was tense at certain points yesterday. And one swing of the bat changed everything and brought so much joy to a lot of people. So that's what stood out the most to me.
You had a story up on sportsnet.ca about the sights and sounds from the Blue Jays, on the field and afterwards, and that party area they have at Rogers Center. Just take us in there, the energy. How can you even describe? Have you been involved in anything like that before?
Yeah, I would say I've been in champagne celebrations before. I've been in, a couple Jays ones in the past. It was in the Yankees wildcard one this year. And I was in the Jays when they clinched the division this year as well. I would say this one, it's tough to gauge, the difference between them all. But I mean, obviously the vibe was incredible yesterday among the players. There was a huge relief. It's like I said, it's tough to compare to prior ones, but everyone knowing they're going to the World Series is it's a powerful thing to say. I remember I asked, I think it was Eric Lauer and Tyler Heineman at different points, has it sunk in, like, the words, "You're going to the World Series"? And Lauer kind of paused for a second and said, "It's going to take a bit, but the champagne certainly helps." And Heineman said, "No, like, not at all. That's just words right now. That doesn't mean anything. I mean, when I wake up in the morning, then I'm going to realize I'm in the World Series." I think just observing players, managers, or the manager, coaches, I think you could sense there was like a relief, right? I think it was like a large exhale. That was an incredible series. I wouldn't say every game was tense, but there were definitely tense moments in the series, and for the tense moments in Game 7. So for Springer to hit the home run, I think you could feel the exhale, and that's what got the party started. And it was kind of clear that was the case.
Yeah, you mentioned that exhale, and I thought John Schneider looked very relieved when this was all over. Obviously, the Game 5 decision to put in Brendan Little, but take us behind the scenes a little bit. You're in the clubhouse all the time, about what John Schneider's like with the players and kind of his relationship, because he strikes me, I've been around him a little bit, but he strikes me as a very players manager and really has his players back. So just kind of shed some light on John Schneider.
Oh, yeah, he's got his players back to a T. I mean, you can hear it every time he speaks to the media. He is a big defender of his players, and I think his players really respect that. Over the course of the season, you talk to certain guys about Schneider's evolution as a manager, and, they really speak highly of him. They love the way that he goes to bat for them. They love the way he defends them. Even the way he communicates with them, I think, is really respected. You look at the Jays team this season with the amount of moving parts that they've had, right? Whether it's platooning the lineup, lefties, righties. You have to get buy-in from players. You have to get buy-in from everybody, the way the Jays have constructed their roster. And Schneider's communication skills have allowed that to happen. I think that's kind of an underrated element to this season, is you can't just, as a GM, acquire all these players, acquire Nathan Lucas and, Davis Schneider and plug them in, and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, plug them in and get them to succeed. You need somebody pulling the strings and somebody communicating to them to get the best out of them. And I think Schneider has done an excellent, excellent job of that this season.
On that note, does this World Series appearance, whether they win or not, does it kind of change the narrative around Atkins and Shapiro? Because there's let's be honest, there's a lot of hate for these guys. Hate's maybe a strong word. There's a lot of displeasure with these guys the last few years, but here they are in the World Series. So do you think, some of that tune is kind of changing?
Fair question. I think, looking at where they were going into the season, I mean, just of what you mentioned, there was a lot of speculation about them. There was a lot of, heat on them. I wouldn't say the World Series changed things. For me, it was the division changed things. The way that this season unfolded from, when they went on a hot streak in, May or June, and then continued that forward. The moves at the trade deadline. I think the way that they ended the regular season alone should have changed the narrative. I mean, this is they've built an incredible team, and credit to them. They've built a veteran team, a team with a lot of nice pieces, a team that complement, like, different pieces on the roster really complement each other. And you can't fluke that. It was done with intention, and I think they did a good job. And all things, being equal, all things being fair, I think that they've done a good job of building out this roster. And I think I think that the narrative should have ended long before the playoffs even began.
George Springer's home run. Take us there into the building. Have you been in a building louder than that before?
I don't know. You're kind of shocked in the moment that it happened. I mean, your brain is going out everywhere, right? I'm thinking all day long before the game yesterday, I'm thinking, okay, well, what's going to happen? I mean, tomorrow, am I going to be, is the season done for me? Like as someone who's covering the team, or am I going to be going to LA next week to cover the team in the World Series, right? Your brain is going everywhere. And then the home run happens. And it's shock that it actually happened. The fans were loud throughout the game, and that was obviously what set them off. It was an incredible sight to behold. But yeah, I wouldn't say it like in the same way that like Heineman and Lauer, who I mentioned earlier, kind of mentioned that the World Series, like, it didn't sink in yet. The home run didn't sink in for me until much later in the evening, until I got home. And when I walked through the door, I realized, like, wow, that was a pretty cool event to witness, and in one of the biggest swings in Blue Jays history just happened, and I was in the ballpark. So it was a cool thing to see and to behold.
Would you say that's the second biggest home run in Blue Jays history, aside obviously from Joe Carter?
I think, like, put it this way. I think for me, any conversation has to start and end with Joe Carter. Like, there's no question that we won the World Series. I mean, that's the number one. I guess whether you want to compare Springer's, put it ahead of Batista's, I mean, I don't want to have that conversation. But yeah, I mean, Springer's, it's got to be right up there for sure.
I want to go back in history a little bit because back to spring training specifically, you were down there. I had the opportunity to go down for a few days and cover the team. When you were in spring training, what were your thoughts on this team before the season started? Where did you think this team was headed in 2025?
Yeah, it was. I sat down with Schneider for a one-on-one with the manager, John Schneider, for a one-on-one towards the end of spring training, just to kind of like get his thoughts on the team and kind of honestly look at his thoughts coming off of what was a down year last year, terrible year, last place, and how he was feeling about the team. And he said a bunch of stuff that really stood out to me. I mean, I'd have to go back and dig up the article, but I guess the main gist of it was how everyone kind of looked in the mirror at the end of last year, and whether that's veteran players, whether that's coaches, whether that's the manager himself, and they realized that here are things that need to change. And so Schneider spoke about it with like real confidence. So I knew that wasn't eyewash. That wasn't something that he was just feeding me as a media member. He believed that. And so it got me thinking okay, that the vibe is different, at least than what he's saying. And then you hear different people talk. I mean, back in spring training, the additions of Max Scherzer, it brought waves within the clubhouse. Like it was, injecting like a real veteran presence and a veteran intensity into the clubhouse. Santander as well. I mean, Anthony Santander's had a rough season, as we all know. But let's not forget, like, when he was added, he was supposed to be a significant piece in the clubhouse. And I think he has been as well. Veteran presence. He was known as a clubhouse guy in Baltimore. Jimenez, same thing. A pro's pro. Everybody loved the way he was going about it. So to answer your question, Matt, I would say there was a market change from the end of last year. I mean, the end of last year was very different. And you could notice that this team, no matter what happened, things would be different this year than they were last year. Based on the roster.
For sure. I have Santander, just as a quick note, as my bounce back candidate for next year. I think he's going to have a good year, 30+ home runs, but that's a conversation for another point in time. Jackson, over to you.
I just wanted to ask you, David, like, there's been a lot of great individual stories this year, right? Obviously, Trey Savage later in the year, but of course, Ernie Clement throughout. Eric Lauer was a fun story. From your perspective, covering the team all year, what was kind of your maybe favorite story to cover, or is there one that really, really stands out to you?
Oh, man, great question. Okay, so you've listed a couple. I mean, I'll give you an under-the-radar pick. I think Kevin Gossman's return to form has been massive this year. Down the stretch, he locked in and became a different pitcher. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but let's say like late August, all of September for sure, and in the postseason, that's a difference maker for me. He's a clear ace. He's been a clear ace these last 3-4 weeks for the Jays, a guy that they can depend on, a guy that can pencil them in, a guy that has that ace bravado, that position players step up. They almost like feel more confident when he's on the mound. Everyone in the organization feels more confident when he's on the mound, and he's delivered. I think the rotation looks a lot different without Kevin Gausman being as locked in as he is right now. And I think that has been one of my favorite stories to cover, because Gausman is just, he's a great player to speak with. He's a great player to the media. He's a great player to cover. And he's been a hard worker since he's got here. I mean, he's been a fun person to cover. And so watching that story unfold has been one of my favorites.
Was there a guy last night that kind of their reaction to the celebration kind of, I know you mentioned Lauer and was it Heineman you mentioned previously. Was there a guy that kind of you were surprised to see the emotion that came out of him?
Oh, good question. No, I think the emotion was pretty strong throughout. I don't think I could single off a single player. I think, Vladdy, it was nice to see him kind of, he got the MVP award. It was nice to see him enjoy that moment and enjoy being feted in that way. I mean, a moment that stands out to me was him, the crowd chanting his name, the crowd who had still remained by the Blue Jays dugout, and Vladdy taking the hose and hosing the fans. I thought that was a really cool scene. But in terms of one specific player, I wouldn't narrow it down to a specific one. I think the emotions were strong throughout.
I have an interesting kind of, I know we're still kind of reflecting on what just happened,
Yeah.
But now you look ahead to the World Series against the LA Dodgers. There's a couple interesting storylines. Shohei Ohtani, against the team that you could argue finished second for his services. Teoscar Hernandez going up against his old team. Is there a story for you you've already kind of got percolating? Is there one that you're kind of, you got your eye on here early before the series starts?
Yeah, one name you didn't mention, Roki Sasaki, right? The Roki Sasaki Miles Straw Revenge Series. That's an easy one. I think Bo Bichette for me. Watching, he said to media members last night that he would be ready to go for the World Series. That is going to be fascinating to watch. The Jays would obviously benefit from his bat in the lineup, his bat, in the cleanup spot behind Guerrero. What version of Bo Bichette are we going to see? He's been unable, obviously, to go on a rehab assignment because the minor league season is done. You're just throwing him kind of into games. If in fact he does return, if that is true and he does return, you're just throwing him into games. He's a super talented player. I mean, Bo is one of these few guys in the big leagues who you trust could hit in their sleep. Does that translate against a incredible pitching staff in the Dodgers and an incredible organization that can game plan the hell out of anybody? So that's something to watch. And then defensively, how does Bo figure in there? Is he, good enough to play short? Do you want to even remove Jimenez, who's been fantastic at shortstop and is arguably the better defender? Is Bo the DH? What does that do for Springer? Does that force Springer into the outfield? So Bo Bichette to me is the most fascinating kind of cog in the days leading up to the World Series.
Realistically, speaking of health, where do you think Bichette is? We've seen obviously clips and highlights, but you're kind of around the team. And the same thing with George Springer and that knee. How serious do you think that knee issue is? Do you think he's kind of over it by the time the series starts? And for Bichette, do you realistically see him being able to make an impact in this series?
It's tough to say. I think that based on, he needed to check a box right before the Mariners series to be able to play for the team, to put him on the roster, and he wasn't able to do that. Now, granted, that was over a week ago, so there's been a lot of time to rest, and he's still got 3 days now until the series starts, until they have to name the roster. So it's tough to say. I mean, he was gearing up and supposedly ready or close to being ready. So we don't know if he suffered a setback or how much that's affected him. So it's really tough to say. With Springer, again, like he will have he was asked during his media conference before the game yesterday, about the status of his knee. And he said, at this point, everybody's dealing with something. You just have to kind of push through it. And he's the one guy who has a extensive career history of pushing through things. Again, you give him 3 days to rest. You take a 75% George Springer, and I'm sure the Jays would take that in a heartbeat if he's not even higher than that. So
do you think they do that? Do you think they do that with Bo Bichette? Maybe if he's not ready, not 100% running bases, do they put him on the roster just as, who knows, a pinch hit or something? Or is that kind of I don't want to say a wasted roster spot because you're talking about Bo Bichette, but is that kind of a risk that they're willing to take?
You know what? It's a fascinating question. And I think AJ Przinsky, I saw he had made a comment saying, like, at this point, the team is working so well, the lineup is working so fluid and well that you just kind of tell Bo to sit it out. I would find that hard for the Blue Jays to stomach. I mean, let's remove the fact that he's going to be a free agent, and we don't need to get into that today and talking about, like, okay, maybe is there gamesmanship from the Jays side of maybe, you want to be in his good books when he becomes a free agent. Let's just not even putting that aside. I think Bichette deserves to be here if he's healthy and if he can play. I think he kind of deserves that opportunity. I mean, he's been one of the reasons this team won the American League East, and beyond that, after Vladimir Guerrero Jr., he was the face of the franchise the last 5 years, and he's a reason that the Blue Jays are where they are and where the trajectory has gotten to where they are. So, on a strictly merit standpoint, that would be very tough to leave Bichette off the roster.
Yeah, it's going to be hard, especially when he made that comment last night, to see him not on the roster come Friday or whenever they have to release it. But I guess before we let you go, I got to ask you the ultimate question, maybe the unanswerable question, is how do the Blue Jays beat the Dodgers? And I think specifically about this Dodgers pitching staff because it is laced with aces, and they've been, rolling this postseason. So what do you think the Jays need to do? What do you think kind of are some of the keys for the Jays to win this series?
Yeah, I think the way that the lineup makes contact, right? We know that, and I think that they can derive a lot of confidence from that. I mean, you look at the Dodgers rotation. I was just thinking about that before I came on this meeting with you guys or this call with you guys. The 4 starters, it's just insane. You can number them any way you want, and it doesn't matter, right? You can have Ohtani go 1 or 4. Doesn't matter. You can have Snell go 2 or 3 or 4. It doesn't matter. It's 4 guys they're going to start, and that's it. And it's dominant pitchers. I think if you're the Jays, you kind of look to – there was a stretch this past season. The stretch for me that really showed me this team is different was against San Francisco. They faced Verlander, who's not the same Justin Verlander as the past, but they faced Logan Webb. They faced Robbie Ray. And there was a sequence in that couple weeks. If you go back and look at it, I think Paul Skeens was in there. There were a bunch of other star aces that they faced. And the Jays fared pretty well against them. And then you look at how they handled the other team's best starting pitchers going forward. They beat up Max Fried. They beat up Carlos Rodon. Every Mariners starter they got to in this series at one point or another outside of Bryce Miller. This team can game plan very well. Dave Popkins, he's an expert at game planning, and they have a great understanding of how to use this roster and maximize the hitting talents of this roster, of this batting lineup, and who they sub in, sub out. So, obviously it's a daunting task, but I think given history this season, you can't count this team out offensively at all. You can't count them out at all, but just especially offensively, you cannot count them out.
Absolutely. This was a lot of fun, David. We appreciate taking the time. I know it was a long night, and you probably took a long hot shower after it. So, but we appreciate you taking the time today to talk to us about this.
Thank you, Matt and Jackson. I really appreciate this.